Hello, good morning. Good morning. This is your old friend. This is Ed Pawley coming to you live from used to be called Freedom Studios. My website and my banner name is Winterbill. So I think let's just go ahead and call it Winterbill Studios here in Eastview, Kentucky. A lot of nicknames over the years. Eastview Eddie is one of them. Previously, when I was doing internet radio, was a lot simpler setup than what I've got now. Actually, this I am in. It was put here for me by me for music, recording. But hey, voice is voice, right? So I always thought about this too, though. I had the opportunity to do some internet, and thanks for joining me. If the obligatory now, please. Let me see if I can get this. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos. It's a standard. It's like boilerplate now. Excuse me. Please click on notifications and subscribe to the channel. And it used to be one thing. I want people. I'd love to have a little success on YouTube, sure, in podcast world, but these are private corporations too. It's not like everything just goes the way you want it to go. But you make the best of things in your time, right? So all we can do is in our time learn from history, but all we can do is live in the time we have. And that's very temporary. Temporal, the Bible says. I hope everybody had a good weekend, even though it was several days ago. And I hope you have a good weekend starting tomorrow. I just finished up college Wednesday and got out my new saxophone for the first time. I found it back in January, actually, but I didn't want to. I don't know. One of the first reasons I waited, I had good reeds at home, Lavaz tenor saxophone, and they're made out of bamboo. If you're not familiar with that process, that's an organic thing. They're not plastic, not metal or cork or anything else. And that's everything. You have to have a great horn or adequate horn, but if you don't have adequate or great reeds, that's everything. That's where the vibration happens, because you put it in your mouth and you create your embouchure. That's the shape of your mouth and how much muscle tension, lower lip. For me, what blows out the first is what I use the hardest, which is lower lip and jaw muscles. Because I actually rest the teeth on the top of the top of the mouthpiece, and that's not standard. But it locks me in, and I can control everything much tighter because I'm actually using my teeth instead of my upper lip. And it anchors good too. It keeps it from, if somebody fell into me or I fell down, or mostly, forget that. Let's say there was a bump or something. It's not going to come up and hit my teeth if it's already on my teeth. I think it's a safer way to go too. So that's just the way I developed my own way of playing on that. But I thank you if you're listening out there. And are you sure? I want this to grow. Well, I do these things if it's just a hobby. Okay? So why not? And we're in a time we just need more talk. And seems a goofy thing to say, but it depends. I think I just was writing this morning, and it is morning. Today is May the 15th, 7:51 a.m. I'm just going to go ahead and get some practice in on this. I have to test with it anyway. What's my gain levels? Does everything sound good? Best time of day to do this, how close to sit to the mic. I really have to go through all this. This is no experience thing for me, other than talking for people to hear. But this mic, I just got it's a Neewer, Neewer condenser mic. First time I've used a condenser mic. I've got a passive for music. I have a great mic by Shure with a U. It's a Shure 58. And I have a Focusrite Scarlett Generation 2 interface. All kind of stuff, but everything changed. I was in school for psychology. I don't know when that's going to happen to move on with that. I got 3 semesters it would take to finish. But this semester, even before the coronavirus, we all found out about that. Even before that, a good month before it, I had just overwhelming, just a myriad of thoughts and profound, just when you understand the way things are going to be, even if it's not like what you like, you just got to prepare for it. And I just knew it was going to change even before that. Believe what people will, but now there's another thing too. That's something I'm going to be curious about. I got to put on a video here, and I don't know how long this is going to go. Hopefully we get to a point where it's more set on its time and stuff, but right now we're just going to wing it. Somebody found my first little 56 second video. The first one I put out was just a test. Somebody found it and loved it. So I'm just going to keep putting stuff out. And I've said that. I know, just keep putting content out, but let people find you. So that's what we're going to do. There might be 5 a day and none another day. I don't know. I want it to be something going out all the time. So I'm not going to worry about the structure. It's kind of like when I was, my band teacher wasn't necessarily the most popular guy, because I think he was also an officer in the Army Reserve. And everybody in the Army, all officers are always at least Army Reserve. They all start out Army Reserve, college and stuff, except the ones that are already enlisted and go OCS, which is Officer Training School, Officer Candidate School, and cadets. Cadets, they wear a silver or black circle instead of bars and birds and oak leaves and all that, stars and all that crap. Anyway, this is see, now that sounds a little loud, and I am in the studio. It's acoustically treated. It's not 100% done. I got 4 more panels and the bass traps, and I'm gonna put a second, because I also do visual stuff too. So we're not 100% done, but school's over 2 days ago, and now it's time to move forward. And right now, I think the most American thing everybody can do is same thing as always. Go back to the origin. Always return to the beginning. America's beginning, not with all its flaws. Think of the ideal dream to begin with, and that's what they were trying to do. But it's always about improving it, a more perfect union. Nobody ever claimed it was perfect. They didn't either. They knew they were fallible. I mean, 99 point something. Well, there were so few that weren't of a faith that wasn't Protestant. That was like 98%. And then the last 2% was almost completely either Jewish. I think there was like, of that 2%, 98% of the 2% was, yeah, all but 0.2% of that 2% was Jewish, and the last little bit was Catholic. That's the numbers I read on the breakdown. And they go back and they look at these things. I mean, there's evidence there in the historical record. Yeah, in those days, if a house didn't have nary another book, to use a little Kentucky vernacular here, if there was no other book in the house, there was a Bible. For most people, it's how they learned to read. So people were far more intimate with the scripture in those days. Even if they weren't a big believer in nothing, people knew the scriptures. It was just part of life. You can't tell me those people wanted a secular government where that was not even considered. That's silly. Silly. Think if you had something in your life that ubiquitous. you just want that not even considered in the future or right then. Well, I was silly. If you look back at that's the thing about history. If you look at history, you see what if somebody's telling you right or wrong, and it doesn't take too long. People sending me stuff. I'm changing right now, starting how I deal with all this. I've had a lot of. I'll be honest with you. I've had a lot of anger, and it's been a crazy year so far. But it was before this other crap started. That was just added. And the whole back and forth on politics. I was in the Army. I was a Cav Scout, which is reconnaissance for Army. It's recon. And yeah, anybody that's ever studied war, I think, could tell you if what you're doing is not working. And this is true in life. I mean, civilian-wise, forget military. The definition of insanity is continuing the same course of action and continue doing the same thing and expect a different result. That's the definition of insanity. And that's pretty good. Hang on a second. Let me see my levels better here. That way I know if I'm shouting or not being loud enough or whatever. I'm going to back up a little bit here. Drink a cup of coffee. It's early. Haven't had a shower yet. Nothing. I'm just up. I haven't had breakfast yet. But I got a pretty good night of sleep. I just saw some new, which is nothing new, but it's a deeper understanding of just how important sleep is. I think I got 12 hours last night. I woke up once, took a leak, went back to bed. That's not a bad night. 7 hours seems to be really good for me. I got a new rule because I'm trying to take it all to the next level this year. I don't want to punch a time clock anymore. I'm 52. I'm happy to see that what I'm reading is young people. They see what their parents had to go through to make money, and they want more. And that's the American thing. Ironically, a lot of them don't believe in things that make America America that could give them what they want if they understood their own system better. I will, right now, apologize with the approval of every American that would ever have to prove that they agree with me by commenting or doing a poll or something. I don't know. And I've got thoughts on that. I'm a psychology and sociology student. So polling and all that. There's a lot of questions I'd like to know the numbers on. And I hope to do some kind of business on that. Because that's here's some free advice. That's a field that's wide open. But I don't think the current crowd of pollsters have figured out the way to accurately gauge, because they've been so wrong recently, so much, that I don't think they can be trusted like they once were. Landlines is what they used to live by. They'd call people. They have not made the transition to whatever we are now. And I think I understand it better than that. I think, the key in any research where you're asking people to self-report is what that's called. Self-report. What do you think about this? Well, you don't know. There's nothing to guarantee that they're telling you the truth or anything. And that's the number one thing, is getting an honest answer. Let me turn this a little bit. Getting an honest answer. Let's try that. That might be a little better. My apologies if this is not all polished up. But like I said, this is literally the second time where I'm just sending it out and putting a stream out. And that's what it's just going to be trial and error. It's just going to be trial and error. And smacking my gums, drinking my coffee, and I'm not going to worry about it all being one big thing either. If I need another cup of coffee, I end this stream, I start another one. Just break them up. 5 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever. No rules, man. Just do it. I call myself I, I call myself a reformed perfectionist. Perfection is a great. It should be. And I taught myself bodybuilding back in the 20s, in my 20s, not the 20s. Good grief, I'd be 100 years old, at minimum. 1920s. No, back in the 1990s. I started as a skinny kid, and then when I was so unhappy and going to public school that I gained weight, and that would be a thing for the rest of my life after that. But different times, I learned how to deal with it. Army was a big disappointment on that. I was so busy working as a scout. That's a war job, and it's field all the time. You're not walking around in barracks and shiny floors. That's very little of your time. Um, the unit I went to first place I got sent after I did all my training at Fort Knox in 1986. Excuse me. When I graduated, same year I graduated high school. So I'm 52. Excuse me. This is just real life. And I also have a culinary degree, so I'm gonna be doing some cooking stuff. I mean, just that's why I say really, I'm. It's not a one thing for me, and that's not my life. But I think fully that it can be done. If you're good at more than one thing, do it and do it as much as you can do. There is a point where you get a diminishing return. You know, maybe you can do 5 things at the same time, but you can't do 6. So if you try 6, okay, something had to give. Maybe it's that, or that took the place of something else that had to go. There's an old saying, I know I'm moving around, but that's the point. That's kind of a good example of what I'm talking about. The subject can change, and it can change quickly. And that's life. It's not fair. It's never going to be fair. This is a dark world, and it's evil. And we need to start talking about some reality again. I'm very disappointed. I was born in '68. A lot of people, there's a whole school of thought within history, the discipline of history, historians, that 1968 was the beginning of the end of the United States of America. That's the year I was born. That was half a century ago. We just went past the 50-year mark on that 2 years ago. A lot of big things was happening. A lot of big things happened that year. 2 assassinations. Martin Luther King Jr. and Bobby Kennedy. Huge. But the big, probably on top of that, going on from I think February on, was the Tet Offensive of Vietnam. 1968. There was a Democrat president in office who was the successor to, he was vice president, who became president because of assassination. In '62, the brother of Bobby Kennedy, who was assassinated in '68, his older brother was president 8 years before and was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. So a lot of stuff happened in the '60s. But it's taken on this mythic thing too. There's just the history. We're not rioting in the streets, and we'll go through all this over time. Kind of the way I'm looking at this is, I've written down a lot of stuff. I for the first time in my life, I really feel like the dam broke up and on is me being a writer, especially of songs and poetry, something that didn't suck. Because until 2016, everything I ever tried to write on, like a song or poetry, any of that stuff, because good writing on everything else, write stories, great, everything was fine. But as far as songs and poetry specifically, I sucked. I wanted to so bad, I couldn't do it. So I really didn't have any old stuff. It was so horrible. I just burned it or threw it away or whatever. I didn't care. Something about apathy is about the only thing I remember. And I remember when I wrote it. I was working at GNC at the time. I was in the best shape of my life. 185 pounds, 5'10". Looked like a pro running back or something. It was just bodybuilding. I wouldn't put it into any sport, which ultimately was the thing what ended it for me. You can't maintain that much discipline putting something into something, or I couldn't, just for what it was, without having something to use it for. Like a sport, you're in pro level athlete shape, but you're not using it for anything other than just being in that shape. That ultimately was the thing that finished me. But life afforded me an opportunity to have something to use it for, and I didn't take it, and that was my mistake. I was wearing my wrestling shoes from high school. I wrestled 1 year, my senior year, and it wasn't that I was thinking anything because I did five years of 8th grade to 12th grade of playing saxophone, tenor sax. And then at 17, going into senior year, I've been thinking about it, and I went ahead and joined the Army as a scout. And it was, Fort Knox is only 30 miles by road from me. And if you went straight across country as the crow flies, as they say, which is a straight A, B to line, being the shortest, it's only 20 something. If you just flew straight there from here. Because that'd be a heck of a track across land. This is Kentucky. And this Fort Knox right up the road. I mean, it used to be part of this county and 2 other counties. Where 3 counties came together, they made a national land reserve. That's in the Constitution. I've heard conservatives say that it's illegal. Washington, D.C. has no legal constitutional right to exist. Well, I don't know what you're reading. See, now that's where I'm a conservative. I understand. No, you can't make up stuff on either side, and you can't be ignorant of things on either side. It doesn't help anything. Yes, the Constitution does give power to the federal government to create ports and forts. And yeah, I've been on Fort Knox. That's my military home away. Military home, and it's closest to home. It's one of the reasons I got to do it basically in my backyard. My Army training for my job, my MOS, I got to do it at Fort Knox, Kentucky. There's no place closer to home, and being in the Army for me, practically living right off post. That burned me sometimes too, though. I got activated. I went back a 3rd time. I've been 3 times, but I did not retire. I'm kind of like in case of glass break, and I'm inside. Yeah. When freedom's in danger, break glass for Ed. But no, I didn't care about retirement. If there's nothing real going on, I don't want to be around. I don't want to play grab ass and all this other shit. And I'm not going to cuss a lot. I think that's just a bad habit. And lately, last few years, I tell you, I've been mad for 4 years straight. But I've been really furious in my life more than once, so that's nothing exactly new either. But I don't like it. It's not good for you. I've had open heart surgery. I'm not supposed to stress out on top of anything else going on. I mean, it's just not good for you. And I've devoted, when I went into bodybuilding, I understood how it worked out that the mental is so important. I'd already been in the Army. And when you've had to climb old hills just so steep, you didn't know if you was going to be able to make the next step, or going down them where it just beats your whole body every time you take a step. Boom, 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 down a hill. At Fort Knox, they call that agony and misery. And then there's heartbreak. 3 hills. And you'd have to go up them and down them. And they were always included in the final road march, which could be upwards of 20 miles. That you had to do to graduate a basic or a OSUT. OSUT's what I went through, OSUT. That's an acronym. Government's full of acronyms, military especially. They love it. They love it. They love to name crap because that's bureaucracy, and you can't ever forget that your military is part of the federal government. It's part of the government. So there's a government mentality that runs through it. And that's unfortunate because people don't take ownership of their stewardship. Now, this is something that could get you. This is classic. People will say about what I'm about to say, they'll say it's old, stupid, sentimental, you got to get yours. Well, there's nothing new under the sun, as the book of Proverbs says. And that's true. That really, the truth of that really fell on me. I already knew that scripture, but one day later, years later, I was here at home and it just really fell on me how profoundly true that is. There is nothing new. There's no activity human beings are doing now that they never did before. Technology comes and goes. It's not even always like if you imagine the stairs. Technology advancements, obviously, if you know any history, go up and they go back, and they go up, and we know it's happened at least twice. Nobody's doubting there was a great flood. It's silly to deny that, whether you ever believe the rest of the Bible or not. All them old civilizations, Mesopotamia and Babylon, all of them, they all recognize and write of a flood, a great flood that covered the earth. That's really not in question historically. Hang on a second. Oh. Sweet cold coffee. That's the best. I had something to drink, but it's empty now. Clock's ticking. When I need more hot coffee will be the end of this number 2 podcast. I'll get into naming all that crap later, but I guess right now I'll just or you help remind me. This is podcast number 2, the Winter Bill, and we thank you for coming to the Winter Bill and staying with us today. Looks like a nice day here at the Winter Bill. The Winter Bill is quiet. Sun's coming up. It's a little overcast. I don't see a lot of direct sunlight. But it's back in the 80s. Ed, where'd you get that name, the Winter Bill? Well, I was out working in the earth and moving rocks. And I'm still working that spot right now. And this year it's going to get landscaped up. I got a huge landscape job to do here. I got 2.25 acre that my dad was kind enough to break off for me. I could put down some roots. He had a 17-acre farm. And I didn't just run up to him, hey, give me. No, I thought about it for quite a while. Gave it due diligence and created a plan. And when it was time, this is old school. I grew up with older school. I'm from rural Kentucky. They call that the country. Now, there's a lot more people, more country, out further out than I. But, you know, country's country, either city or country. But I've had people say that. That don't live that much further out. There's a lot of things that went into a decision to study psychology and stuff, and I've always noticed how people act. But I've always had a lot of empathy. But I tell you, a lot of stuff went off the charts after my heart surgery. Yeah, and one thing was I knew people weren't very good at listening in this day and age. But it was, if you imagine if you imagine a dimmer, you know, the round dimmer for a light switch, you turn it on and it's dim, and then you turn it to the right and it gets brighter until you're all the way over. Before the heart surgery, and what some of that caused was there were some other medications that caused some weight gain. So I gained about 12 to 15 pounds for 7 years straight. I hit 40, still pretty good, pretty svelte. About 215. I was within striking distance. 185 is perfect for me. Based on past experience, that number has continually come up. And when that happens in life, I don't think that's too much of a coincidence. When I wrestled in high school to get ready, I wrestled in high school 1 year specifically as a pre-basic training move on my part. And this was probably one of the best times in my life I can pat my younger self on the back, my 17-year-old self, because it was a wise move. And honestly, I think it might have. I don't know. All I say is because I was determined not to lose, not to fail. There was no way I was gonna go to basic training at 18 years old and fail. I just had my mind made up. My brother and my dad both had been in the Army, and their advice to me was don't go in the Army. So I went in the Army. But even though I didn't take their advice, the fact that both of them, again, two people saying the same thing, that's significant usually. Both of them had the experience of being in the Army and told me not to go. They said, like, go in something else. Go in anything else. Just don't go in the Army. That's what they told me. So I did well enough on the testing that I could get a shorter, instead of 3 or 4 years, if you had a really bad score, just enough to get in, maybe just be a fighter of some sort, or But I had a good enough score at the time on the ASVAB. I think I did a 52. It's 1985, and I screwed up on that. I cost myself points on that. I'd been thinking about it since probably 16. First, I was going to do Coast Guard because I really didn't want to go in the Army and all that killing and all that stuff. More of a war thing. I was thinking. I tried to think ahead on how could maybe law enforcement afterward. And that something that continued in my thoughts, but ultimately I aged out and I just like, okay, dude, you had your shot. You're too old for it now. And there was that point as I aged in on 40 where I just put things away. And you really got to do that. It's kind of like not being a mental hoarder or an emotional hoarder where you internalize things that never get resolved. That eats up your energy. It's kind of virtual, but if you live an emotion enough, even though nothing in physical reality is changing, they can affect you somatically, which is body, Greek for body. Somatically, you can have a heart attack. More people die on Monday mornings than any other time. What are more people doing on Monday mornings in America than anything else? What correlates to that? They're going back to work on a job. And when asked, poll after poll over the years, most people don't do what they're born to do, what they're best at doing, or what they love to do. They got into things for various reasons. They rationalized it upon the way. And then they got stuck. Because usually they went in debt. And debt gets you stuck. Okay? You have to keep going in. Even though you're checked out. I heard somebody say something about your body was there, but your soul was elsewhere. And how many people really feel that way? The things they do through life, where they're not really present because they don't want to be. They're just going through the actions, going through the motions. Okay? I hope everybody's doing good today. I know this could sound like rambling, but it's I guess you would call it free form. I have thought about stand up, but I'm not a comedian. I think what I could be historically, you would call you'd probably call a humorist, in the vein, more in the vein of a Will Rogers type. I've got just a lot of stories and insights and different things, and I have an intellectual curiosity, and I'm not stuck on any one subject all the time. But that's the problem lately with politics and all that. It's so important. Well, yeah, I'm a great singer. I'll say it. But who cares? I could be the greatest singer in the world. Who cares if I have no freedom to pursue singing? Freedom's it's a precious thing, and it's rare. The history, I've heard this said many times, the history of the world and the history of mankind is not freedom. It's not enlightenment. It's usually darkness and death and war and tyranny and slavery, and those are more the natural, because we are humanity, and I'll tell you what I understand to be the truth, or know to be the truth. It's not even understanding, but I understand it also. This is Adam flesh, and once sin entered in, that was it. You can't make that clean again naturally. You can't live good enough. Things like anything that promises a utopia, which is heaven on earth. James Madison is the guy that really gets credit for writing the Constitution, and that was added on was the first 10 amendments. He wrote those in mass too, because they complained. The states complained. Yeah, we'll pass this thing. We'll adopt this, but you got to put some individual rights in there. So it was a promise made. And then Madison produced 12 amendments, 10 of which were adopted all at once. Only time it's really been done like that. 10 amendments all at once. It's called the Bill of Rights. And it was such a thing of itself. It has its own preamble. I didn't know that until just probably not that many years ago, maybe within the last 10. Looked it up one day, and sure enough, there it was. It was like as important as the Constitution itself. And if they'd have thought about all that stuff when they were making the first one, it probably would have just been in the Constitution as opposed to amended to it. But that's the way it worked out. So that's the way it is. He said, if men were angels, which is to say perfect and holy, and have no greed or any of the human failings that we have, envy, strife, greed, jealousy, lust, angel of light, God's angels, would be as perfect as him and like him, and would do no wrong, would not cheat their neighbor, would not lie, would not do any of the things we do every day, because we're not perfect, because we're not that. He said if men were angels, we would not need government, because you wouldn't even have to write the rules down. Everybody would just live by the perfect golden rules. The golden rule itself, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, I'm just talking about life. This is, but this is part of life. This is part of reality. We can't see reality. You see a temporal existence governed by the laws of physics and math. A great clock set in motion. And we just went through all that in school. I got those textbooks. I'll be reading more of them. I did not do well. That's an understatement. But this was my worst semester ever. It really changed before coronavirus was announced. But after the spring break, which they doubled from 1 week to 2, I was already in trouble. I was thinking I could salvage it because the weather was getting better. Winter is the hardest time of year. I will never try to go full time. If I ever go back to college, I'll never try to go full time like that in a winter setting. It's just too hard on me at this age. February is the hardest month of the year. It's the shortest of days, but it feels the longest for me. It's just right in the heart of darkness. My birthday's in March. Usually the days are starting to get a little longer. You hopefully get a few warmer days. Get out a little bit maybe. Cut the grass first time. We didn't have any of that this year. Yeah, we're still, it's 80s yesterday and today, but just last week we still dealing. We've had 2 killing frost after blooming. Everything bloomed early and then it froze. All my black locust tree leaves on the biggest trees, they all dried up. Had to grow out new. And then there was another freeze. Now that didn't get them, so it toughened them up. A lot of times what we think is bad, there's so much going on that we can't even consider. Connections we can't fathom. So, I don't know that we think it's bad. It's not going to help probably orchard sales in this state. But, I wouldn't invest too much money in orchard sales in Kentucky. That kind of agriculture. Because we get a lot of late frost. And, once a bloom gets killed, that's a hard year to get any much fruit out of a tree. I hope it's all making sense, folks. I'm just talking. I'm getting ready to take a break. I don't know how long. How long have I been talking? Oh man, 40 minutes. 41 minutes right now. Well, I'm glad it's going good. I'm probably going to eat some breakfast. Get another cup of coffee. Might take a shower. I don't know. I might not. I'm probably going to watch some TV, to be honest with you. But anyway, this will be up. It's just content. I hope you like listening. If it's one thing if you can't stand somebody's voice, first off, if it sounds bad, and somebody gave me some advice on that, but I already knew it. I still thanked them. It's true. If the sound quality sucks, I'm not going to listen. I'm a person that really appreciates quality. Quality of sound. If my voice is unpleasant or the recording of it is unpleasant, people aren't going to listen. So once you get past that, I hope the words are something that can be beneficial. Really, it sounds trite. It's like a bullet plate answer. What are you trying to do, Ed? Well, really, it just comes down to helping people. I hate to see people in the knots they're tied up in right now. And even knowing better, I can get caught up in things. When these emotions hit you so hard, people stew and stew and stew, and then they blow up. We don't need it. It's bad for the mental health and emotional health of the country. Because the country is the people. Let's never be confused about that. Corporations aren't buildings like transformers walking around, and government is not buildings with marble fronts walking around like Godzilla and King Kong and are battling each other. It's people. It's always people. America is people broken down into states. The states have their own sovereign constitutions, and they lent every power that the federal government has. The states own those powers, and they have lent it through the Constitution to the federal government. The same one that was created on paper. It's all written down. We're not supposed to just make stuff up. When you get two sets of law, and that's plenty of discussion right there. That's more discussion probably than I even want to have, but it'll have to be had. Put things in perspective, and I hope people would listen again. One thing I think we're going to have to do is give up the 24-hour news cycle. It's driving people nuts. They sit and they just watch it and watch it and watch it. It's like it's like a barbershop thing. They just get louder and louder, and one thing feeds the other, and people just, as soon as something comes out, it goes through social media like a virus, like a fire, like a forest fire. And that's going to have to end. I'm old enough to remember when there was no cable news. And when it was all new, that was one thing, but I think it's now obsolete. We've moved past it. And I'm not saying don't watch news, but what are you getting from... I quit watching TV news some years back. It's worthless for getting information. I've told my older family the same for years, and I think the proof keeps coming in because I tell them about things they don't even know about, never heard about, and they watch like 5-6 hours of news a day. Easy. Probably 5, where it's all current events. You're just not getting... I remember when journalism was more done right. It's not supposed to have opinion and emoting and eyebrows and little facial features. And there's a lot of stuff verbally But and that's worse than ever. But it's not just that. It's production. TV is always produced. There's no such thing as reality. I don't watch reality TV because it's not reality either. You put a camera on people, it's human nature. Very few people can just ignore it and act like themselves. Everybody else changes. They change their behaviors. Even if it's a dummy camera with no guts in it, if they think it's real, it changes how they act. And we gotta defang these things that are killing us, like an animal. And one thing we can turn away from, I think, is the 24-hour news cycle. When there was no internet, cable TV and cable came out of no internet world. Now there's internet. You can look stuff up all the time. Why do you need every half hour a new show, or every hour a new show coming on, just rehashing the same stuff over and over and over and over and over and over? There's no need now. They can't fill up 24 hours with news, or they choose not to. It could be a lot more diverse, but if you notice, it's usually one story at a time, and it goes 24 hours a day. And we're sitting now, you throw social media on top of that, and it's just one forest fire going through at breakneck speed, subject at a time, and it's all titillizing and titillating, and it's meant to be. It's like gossip. It's like sitting around listening to gossip and tattling and backbiting and just all these things that are negatives, bring no good. And I personally, I'm kind of done on. I'm gonna do more of this. I think we need more just thoughtful discussion and stuff. This yelling match stuff doesn't work. I'm not gonna keep going into it, especially when it gets so ridiculous. When you're arguing with people that want to argue over anything, and they'll concede nothing. I mean, if I'm wrong, and if I could write a book on just being wrong, just from my life. I've been wrong on some of the biggest things in life. But that's the thing. Nobody likes to do that. In fact, people hate doing that. But that's pride, and that's a horrible habit to get into. I've been wrong on a lot of things, and I'll get into different things. And y'all use the comments, and I'll try to look through them. If there's any topic that you're curious about, or you thought might like, what's this guy? What's he gonna say about this? Yeah, I'm gonna keep the same rule about what I'll respond to as when I was doing internet radio back about 6 years ago. I guess that would have been 2014. I always thought, man, could I do like a talk radio, like conservative talk or something? Not and I don't really want to be anybody else. There's just me, and that's not. I don't want to just do politics. And I'm not going to do just politics. It's really just life. It's part of our lives, so it has to be discussed. And we live in a republic, not a democracy, a representative republic where we hire people to do these things for us. If it was a democracy, you and I would have to keep up on all the legislation. We'd have to vote on it. That'd be a direct democracy. We don't have that. We have a little democracy. In our voting, we go to the polls, but it's a republic, so we elect people to represent us. Basically, our proxies. Our servants is what they're supposed to be, public servants. And like stewards, they take care of the day-to-day for us, like lords of the manor. But the problem is they've come to see more and more of themselves as lords, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. And that's going to have to change. I tell you, and changing my mind. No, I'm not so intransigent. You have to be able to, especially in historic times, because your preference may have to give way to a secondary position. I have never been for term limits too much, because I think I try to stick with founders did what they did for a reason. And I believe in that based on everything I've learned and read on that pretty much and heard discussed with logic and reason. But I came around to a change on that where I do favor trying to control how much time they spend in office because it's going out of control quick. In the 1800s, 150 years ago, the average length of time somebody would leave home and be a representative in Congress, House or Senate, or House, less than 2 years, and that's a 2-year position. Today in the House, that average has raised to 9 years. That's greater than fourfold increase. 4 times longer than the average of 150 years ago. These are important things that we need to talk about and understand. They don't fit on TV anymore. The things we need don't fit on TV anymore. You get 7-8 minutes to do something. What are you going to do? You name call. And people, young people who have been surveyed now and are saying they think an argument's won by the person who cusses the most or really just talks the best trash. It's not the rules of debate. It's not intellectual. It's not thought-based. It's emotion-based. It's rude. That's not what's going to get us, taken care of in the future where we go moving forward with the younger of today. Because they're the us's of the future. That's posterity. Posterity definition being, and that's a term, everybody's named. All the parties are named. It's just parliamentary. That's all this country is. We live by gentlemen and lady rules. And when we can't do that, it's over. That's civilized. We write things down. We honor agreements. We should honor a handshake. See, the goal is always perfection, knowing that we're not perfect. Just like in bodybuilding. Yeah, I had a perfection goal, but I understood completely I can't reach true perfection. It's just not going to happen. But in reaching forward, man, you go so much higher. There's no saying about lowering your expectations. You know what the scary part about lowering your expectations is? What if you hit them? Man, I love it. I think I'm going to get off here. I'm going to get some cereal or something. But we'll keep putting stuff out. But right now, it's no form to it. I'll just click on notifications, click on the subscribe button. I sure appreciate it. And I'm just going to start. Really, my goals are, I've been prepping for this, and this has now kind of forced everything to move forward. It's about, in America, here's the sad thing, and then I'm going to take a break. When I come back, I come back. The sad thing is when I hear Americans, this is the country where the American dream is not buying a house, not the original. It was simply a place where you are secure in your property. And that's everything. That's your thoughts and everything. You outward. And then we have a creator. He gives us these rights as humans. And then we agree together that that's true. And we write down that we'll live by agreements. And then we all honor them together. And we trust each other with their freedom. There's no saying about freedom. Freedom ain't free or freedom isn't free. That's true. And I thought about what that means. Traditionally, colloquially, it's taken to mean blood. People who fought and died. And that's all true. People shed blood for this country. Absolutely. In many ways. But I think the true price of freedom is the cost of it. You have to trust your neighbor with their freedom. That's the real cost of freedom, I believe. And that's how they get you. Oh, you can't trust him. Now look, he might, like at the local level here, across I have houses within eye shot of me. This place across the road, Well, you wouldn't. I've had this conversation with like magistrates and stuff, local government. Now, you wouldn't want them to do something, paint their house purple, pink, polka dot, whatever. You wouldn't want them to do something that's an eyesore and lower your property level or value, right? I said, no. Why do I want a higher property value? Oh, it means I have to pay you more property taxes. The higher the value is, and it's always follow the money. And I don't say that to be jaded, but it's a fair thing to say. Follow the money if money is involved. Who benefits? Quid pro quo, doctor. That was on last night again. It is stupid. Good grief. I turned it on there. He was just whooping up on killing the two guards when he escaped. Silly. I tried watching Hannibal on the one with, what's his name? Mars? I think he's from Denmark. Is it Mars? I could look it up, but I'm not gonna do it. I'll look it up another time. I like him. Good actor. He did a like a Viking kind of thing where he played a fighter, but he never spoke. It was like some kind of Viking story or something around that kind of time frame, Middle Ages or something. That was a good movie. Good movie. And of course he played the Bond villain in Casino Royale. Craig's first outing as Bond. Well, I know it's been all over the place. You just keep me on track. If you listen over time, tell me where I left off. Leave comments, I'll read them. Help me be better. Thanks. This has been Ed Pawley from Eastview, Kentucky. Winterbill Studios, winterbill.com. There's not much there right now. You're like, oh, dude, I'm there. There's nothing here. Yeah, there's some junk, but it's mostly just pictures. It's there because I wanted to protect the name. Get that under me, if whatever you call that. It'll be used in the future. Just give me time. I got so much to do. 2020 is a big year. Make the most of it. Get a dream. If you don't have one, go out and do something. Start a business. Do something. This is the time. That's the only thing that's going to save America's peace. It's like freedom's like a muscle. If you don't use it, it gets weak and flabby, and it won't be there when you need it, when you're in danger. If you use it like a muscle, it will grow, become denser, stronger, harder, and it'll be there when you need it. And we all need that together. So peace, love, God bless, and freedom and free. Trust your neighbor. Talk to your neighbor. Get to know him. And use your freedom. Peace.